Hi, I'm Tom R., pastor at Village Church, and I'm glad to welcome you to Village Connect. The passage that we'll look at in this session is one of my favorite stories from the Gospel of Mark. If you're a regular at Village, you'll recognize at least part of this story. It's found in the 9th chapter, verses 14 through 29. So let me invite you now to pause the video and to read this together. And when you finish, come back. We'll start the conversation. He said, "I believe, help my unbelief." It was a prayer. His son was sick, and there was no help coming unless Jesus could help. Now, some might suggest that unbelief is a bad thing, but I would suggest when it comes to the gospel, unbelief is a frequent companion. You see, we live in a different time. In this hospital behind me, like hospitals all around the world, God has fashioned doctors and nurses with discipline and brilliance, with talent and compassion, and led by God's Spirit, they do what they know to do to bring healing. But it's not mechanical. It's not a given. In every hospital, there are patients and families, doctors and nurses who are in the battle, struggling to bring healing. There's nobody who can't relate to the prayer of this father. Can you heal my son? I believe. Help my unbelief. Let me tell you something this passage doesn't mean. Don't read this text to suggest that if you have enough faith and the right faith, healing is automatic. Your own experience in life and what we witness around the world demonstrates that's not the truth. It's not mechanical because God is not a machine. An amount of faith does not equal healing. It can't be read that way. So how do we understand this text? So how do we interpret this passage? This man brings the greatest concern of his life to Jesus. He brings the greatest burden of his heart. Can you heal my son? And Jesus says, if you believe, all things are possible. Our man is honest. He says, I trust you, but I also know how strong this disease can be. I trust you, but I know the power of evil in the world. I believe. Help my unbelief. Now, a couple of things about this phrase. The Greek word that is translated belief is pisteuo, and a better translation of pisteuo is trust. Belief and trust, they're not quite the same. You can believe something, it's an intellectual category, but if you trust something, it shapes the choices you make every day of your life. My wife Carol and I, we took a vacation. We went into New England and went to a wonderful B&B there in New Hampshire. It was the dead of winter. We came out onto the porch the first morning we were there, all bundled up, and I looked up, there was a lake across the road from the B&B, and the lake was frozen solid. It was covered up with pickup trucks and cars and people ice fishing. I grew up in Georgia. You almost never see that there. I walked down to the lake, and the ice was thick. And look, I knew the ice would hold me. I believe that. But I couldn't bring myself to walk out on that frozen lake. I didn't trust it. I didn't pisteuo it. If you trust something, it's not just something you think. It shapes the choices of your life. What Jesus says is, can you trust me with your life? Can you trust my way, my teaching? Can you trust how I reveal you are to be in this world? Trust me with all that you are, your choices every day. And the man said yes and no. I do, but I struggle to. I want to, but I have questions. I believe, help my unbelief. It seems to me an appropriate response to the demands of this gospel. You know, I can only think of one way to eliminate unbelief. I can only think of one way to eliminate unbelief from your faith journey. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So when I was a kid, my neighbor Danny Martin and I, we would play basketball in his driveway. Every afternoon after school we'd meet and we would have dunking contests. We did. We had dunking contests. He was a tall kid for his age and he often beat me, but I was competitive. Now, I haven't done it in a long time. Let me tell you the secret to this. It's really not that hard. All you have to do is adjust the goal. Bring it down to 6 feet, 6.5 feet. Anybody can do it. That's all it takes. But here's the thing. The life that Jesus talked about is a 10-foot life. It's not half size. It's a 10-foot life. The gospel is a 10-foot gospel. We can't reduce it down to something that is manageable and certain, something that is free of unbelief. No, his teaching and his life and his way, it is always something that we strive to live, that we endeavor to embrace, that we trust. But trust is a journey. It's a long walk. And a faithful prayer is, I believe, help my unbelief.